Welcome to Rewilding Women with Jennifer Dorothy.
Laura Newbegin.
And Laura Rose, empowering women to go forth confidently into the wilderness, both internally and externally.
And maybe we'll go around and introduce ourselves.
Okay, I'll start. I am Laura Newbegin, and I live in Victoria, BC. I have a 14-year-old son and have been single for most of my parenting journey. I've dated a little, but more so when he was younger, and found that my rewilding process has become my focus the last few years, even before I really knew what that meant. I'm a certified life coach, and I help women who are rediscovering their authentic sovereignty, but feeling lost after being in relationships and parenting that have required more giving than receiving. And I'm also working with mentor coaches and continue my own inner child work and deconstructing limiting beliefs as I step into the role of businesswoman. And Jen.
I love that.
Well, thank you.
I'm Jennifer Dorothy. I'm living on Bainbridge Island outside of Seattle. I'm a mom of 3, and I have a coaching business called More Joy for Moms. I offer mom and me rewilding classes for moms and toddlers. But really that's more of a vehicle to be getting moms outside and talking about moving beyond the isolation of modern motherhood so they can feel better, start thriving, and experience more joy and fun. So how about we'll have Laura Rose go next, and then I was thinking we would answer the question, what's wild for you this week?
Great, thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Laura Rose. I'm a wellness coach and registered therapeutic counselor, currently living in Vancouver, BC. I say currently because I tend to move around a lot. I've lived and traveled and worked all over the world. But currently I'm supporting busy professionals design and build a life that feels good on the inside rather than just looking good on the outside. So I'm also a corporate wellness consultant, supporting companies to create workplace wellness programs that actually make a difference. So I am going to pass it back to Laura Newbegin and ask what's wild for you this week.
Yeah, so what's wild for me is that other than the crazy windstorm that we're in the middle of, that I have 6 working days left in my 9-to-5 job. So after working in dentistry for almost 20 years and almost 9 years at my current clinic, I am leaving to do coaching full time. So it's bittersweet, and I have a lot of colleagues and patients to say, see you later to. And it's also really wild in that transition to now change how I'm introducing myself as the coaching takes front stage. But it's really exciting because I'll have now the space to create all of the ideas that have been bubbling up over the last few years. So yeah, it's great. How about you, Jen?
Oh, let's see. So I am preparing for a trip. And interestingly enough, I've hit this like rock bottom over the last 2 days where my kids were with their dad. So I had 2 days really with no kids in the house, and it hasn't been like that in a long time. So I found myself just wanting to sleep. But I have all these things I need to do. So it felt like this emotional flu, and I was trying not to beat myself up and be like, get up, you have to do these things. But I was like, take care of yourself. Something's going on. Maybe you don't know what it is. And so one of the days though, I was like, all right, I have to get outside. I know I'll have some healing moment in the forest. And so I get out there and I'm with my dog and this other dog that I don't know very well because I was taking care of it. And I was just really stompy. I'm like stomping through the forest, like looking for my like moment and this like moment of beauty. It's muddy and it's like raining. And I want to like move out of my, mood. And I'm thinking, oh, this is not necessarily a good place for me to be. And I had let my dog off the leash. And it was like part of like, I just want him to be wild and I want me to be wild and in my emotional mess. And then I was like, wait a minute, this isn't going to be safe because there's horses on that trail. So as soon as I had that thought, I heard these birds just going crazy. And I was like, oh, those are warning calls from those birds. And they were just, I think they were probably crows or starlings, and they were really going crazy. So I was like, I called the dog back, put him on his leash, and then I'm going through the forest just listening really carefully. So it was like the forest then started talking to me literally, and out, and like very soon out of the distance come like these two huge horses, and they're being led. They're not being ridden, which I think would have been more dangerous if my dog had like run up to them, because they would have to just hold on instead of like been on the horses. And I was just really grateful. I was like, oh, thank you to the birds for giving me that signal. And then for me to hear them and to like heed the call. And so then from there on, I was like, okay, I have this inner wildness that's going on with me right now that I can't necessarily tame, or I'm trying to, or who knows what I was doing. And then there was being in the forest where I felt like, wait a minute, it's more just about being present here and listening to when it's quiet and when there's like a warning call. So it's a moment where I was able to just pay close enough attention that there's also the calls within us that we either just don't want to listen to, or like what I ended up doing was just going home and going back to sleep on the couch. Like, this is the call, take it, heed it, and your kids aren't here, so take the time. Even though I wanted to like stomp around the apartment and get a bunch of stuff done, I was like, no, it's quiet time in the forest in my house, like just rest. So it was a good one. And I think one of those little tiny nuanced moments where if I was out there with a group, I would have said, hey, do you hear the birds? Because I know in general, that call of those birds wouldn't have necessarily like sparked anybody's like awareness. They would just have sounded like birds calling. And I was like, no, those birds are calling for like a warning. And so something's about to happen. And like these huge beasts came walking through the forest. So it's the little things like that that I'm grateful I still pay attention to. And yeah, I'm very curious what the two of you have to say.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. So much of that story resonated. I spent some time in the forest this weekend as well, and have the luxury of being able to go into the forest by myself quite often. And so it is great to pay attention to those signals and having to, in order to make sure that I'm safe and secure, because there are things that can happen in the forest. But your story of listening to the birds definitely resonates. My, I guess what's wild for me this week was I had the opportunity to go to Elizabeth Gilbert on Friday. And for those who don't know, she wrote Eat, Pray, Love. And amongst other books, she also wrote one called Big Magic, which is all about creativity in the face of fear. And as she was sharing her story, it kind of took me back to when I started experiencing my own versions of Eat, Pray, Love. And I went down memory lane a little bit this weekend around all the journeys and adventures I've been on, because I'm now at the edge of the end of a chapter in my life where I'm figuring out what's next, and I have some decisions to make. And I'm deciding whether or not I'm going to make Vancouver home base, or if I'm going to take off on another adventure. And although both paths look amazing, they're going to lead me to very different places. And so I was really reconnecting with, how do I make those decisions? What comes up for me in the process, and recognizing that because I haven't followed the traditional path of getting married and having children, I have a lot of opportunity and freedom in my life, but sometimes it feels like too many decisions that I have to make. And so for me, a big part of the rewilding is actually like being able to tune into my inner truth and, just look at my life in these 3-month increments rather than projecting super far into the future. But yeah, and looking at it as an adventure and a journey rather than, oh, I need to have every single thing figured out. It's like, okay, no, what's the next step for the next 3 months? So actually, right after we record this, I'm gonna sit down with my pen and paper and just do a nice little brain dump of like, what is my intuition calling me to right now? You know, what is like the wildest and most authentic version of myself calling for next? Because anytime I've followed that, it's led me on the most amazing journeys. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to where this one goes.
That sounds delicious.
It really does sound delicious. And you both touched on the like being in the forest and that external wilding, but really bringing it back into the internal piece and like listening to your intuition, listening to how the signals are around you all the time externally, and that's often what we're paying attention to. But that's the biggest piece of rewilding for me right now, is trusting my intuition, paying attention to when the signals, because they're not often very loud, they're more quiet. And so just giving myself the real freedom and space to like hear it and feel it. And yeah, Laura, like you said, not look too far ahead into that future tripping, but kind of small increments of what's manageable over the next 3 months. You know, my son is in high school, that's going to be finished. Then we've got this whole other journey starting with his cadets. So I can't, project too far, and just go slow, pay attention, and feel all the feelings fully as they come up each day. Yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Do either of you have any questions for anybody else?
I guess, Laura, when I hear you say that, like tuning into your intuition, how do you know when it's your intuition, or how do you know when it's external? Because I know for myself, you know, living in this world, like we get told, okay, you do this, and there's this like track that we're supposed to follow. And I noticed myself even this morning, I had a later than normal night last night because I went for a cold dip in the river up in Squamish and sauna, and it was beautiful. But part of my wild self likes to be in bed by 9 p.m. And I didn't get home until about 11. So this morning, rather than getting out of bed at my usual time and, you know, meditating and doing my normal morning practice, I found myself laying in bed longer. And I couldn't really at first determine, like, is this my intuition telling me to give my body rest? Or is this, you know, my ego that's preventing me from actually stepping into the next greatest version of myself? Because I knew, like, it's Monday morning, we had our busy, you know, I had a busy day, and then we were recording. And so sometimes it's like, how do we differentiate between the intuition and the ego?
Such a good question. And it's a practice. For me, what I'm finding is there's two different voices. And the one is, you know, when I'm, for example, this morning, I made the promise to myself last night when I was in bed early, and it had been a real day of rest. And again, I had no kid either at home. And wasn't feeling great. So I just gave myself permission to fully rest and be in sloth mode. But then just recognizing that that's not going to be my go-to habit. So I had given myself, okay, today, yes, is a busy day. So I wanted to make sure I got up and did my meditation and my morning rituals and practice. And as I do that, my monkey mind is one voice that's kind of going and also feels like it's cerebral, and my intuition is more, as I'm getting into a deeper meditation state, it's more of a inner gut voice. It's much softer, and she always starts with, there we go. And then I know, I'm like, oh, there, okay, you're here. Like, she literally as I like, calm down or bring myself back into my body, it's like, there we go. And I'm like, oh, okay. And so, for example, I had yoga on Thursday, and this whole class is coming to an end. So I'm trying to figure out what's next. Do I continue with her or do something different? And intuition is telling me, yes, I need to continue some kind of practice, but the Kundalini practice, she does not do, and it keeps coming in different signals. So I'm like, okay, this keeps coming into my field and something is calling. So maybe just trying it out, and whether it works or not, who knows, but just trying things out that I know this works for me. This keeps coming up. People have brought this into my field. So why not, you know? And so it's just kind of trusting the process, not always knowing 100%, but taking a step forward and then another step forward.
Yeah. And it comes from that nervous system regulated place.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I was writing about that in my journal, that it's only been about 6 months that I feel like I've been doing embodiment practices regularly. And it's just around this time that I'm like, okay, this is what it feels like to be regulated on a regular basis. And when then I'm dysregulated, or my kids are and they try to dysregulate me, I'm like, oh, that doesn't feel good at all. And so it's a total shift from one place to another. And being now able to look back at least just 6 months, which it seems like just a glimpse, to say, oh, that was a really uncomfortable place to live, where I did for, 48 years. And now I'm like starting this journey of being regulated more often. And then the calming intuition makes sense. And she doesn't have a mean voice. Like, she's not the voice of the angry, anxious one who's trying to like criticize me into doing things. It's nice to differentiate.
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel, Laura Rose?
Yeah, well, it's taking me back even to Friday when, so there were thousands of women at this event with Elizabeth Gilbert, because she's so popular and has made such an impact on women's lives. And she was so inspiring in her talk, talking about this revolution that she wants to create around, we often look at women, we're like, oh, they need to be fierce and, empowered and independent and strong, and also sweet and nourishing. And, we have all these expectations that we place. But she said, like, her dream is to see the relaxed woman. And it actually hurt my heart a little bit to hear the laughter that word, created for the audience, because I could just sense the discomfort of these women, feeling like, relaxed woman. Okay, easy for you to say. But instantly I was looking at my friend who I was there with, and like, we were very relaxed. I feel like we're very regulated in general, and, have this trust in the universe. And it just really affirmed that I'm on the right path of wanting to help people regulate their nervous systems and be able to show up in their lives. Because yes, like, when we are able to stay calm and grounded, that's when we're able to actually make those decisions from intuition. And I had this vision of myself in Peru, as I'm making these decisions. I had this vision of myself in Peru when I was doing reforestation work, and we were like using these machetes to hack away at this bamboo that, just completely took over the forest, because with no trees, the bamboo becomes like weeds. And we couldn't see, like, it was just bamboo everywhere. So you're like, hacking through this bamboo and literally have no idea what's going to be next. But just knowing and trusting and having that sense of calm to just keep on going. I feel like that's where the intuition comes in for me.
I also work with, absolutely. And I work with, I think you're a manifesting generator as well. Jen, do you know your human design?
Manifesting generator.
Okay.
That's why this happened.
That's why this happened. So that's the other piece, is like the satisfaction and the frustration feelings. So when I'm on the right path and just feeling satisfied as things kind of fall into place, and then when it's not working and when I'm not aligned, recognizing that I'm feeling really frustrated and can project that on other people, but I'm learning to like, hang on a second, bring it back home. And that's the other part of just following my intuition and recognizing where my own energy flows.
Yeah. Well, this is a good thing to wrap it up on. My final point is that when I would have groups of women outside, because I did this for years in Seattle with moms and tots in habitat exploration program, they would get antsy and uncomfortable. And as soon as somebody's, you know, nervous system was dysregulated, the whole group would get upset. And I would have to figure out like what basic need they needed. And sometimes it was that they had to go to the bathroom and they didn't know how to do that outside. And it was these really basic things where I was like, oh, that's right. Like our nervous system is going to get upset and the whole group is going to be affected if somebody is having a hard time. Like we can all feel it because we finally settle into our animal bodies and we feel the animal body that's right next to us.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys have any closing points, but I love the direction this went.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you.
I appreciate the conversation, and I appreciate you, closing it out with that reminder of co-regulation, because that's exactly like, part of my dream is to make sure that each individual is regulated, because we do, when we go into the world and we're dysregulated, that causes others to be dysregulated. Like our nervous system is always scanning the environment for clues of safety or not. And so when we notice that somebody else is giving off that energy of dysregulation, it actually activates our nervous system as well. Whereas, even as a counselor and coach, like one of my main goals is to actually just stay there completely regulated, no matter what my clients come with, because that's actually where the healing is done. When we're able to stay calm and regulated and focused, it lets the other person know that they're safe and secure.
Yeah.
I think I'm only about the 6 months out from also taking it personally. Like, oh, this person's upset. Are they mad at me?
Yeah.
And like, nope, back to regulation.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Thank you for bringing that up. I love that so much. The regulation, and with kids too, right? Like, yeah, just
It's
important to
everything.
regulate ourselves and mirror that or practice that in front of them too.
Yeah. And I think it's an important part of rewilding.
100%.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
Like I think when I used to think of rewilding, I was like, oh, everything's just going to be chaotic and all over the place. And I was like, no, actually, in order to truly rewild, we need to be regulated and calm.
Yeah, rewilding is being really still instead of reacting to everything that's going on around us. It's just like, hey, coming back to our deepest selves.
Yeah, there was a deep trust that I developed with my clients where they like trusted that whatever happened, even though, I mean, it was in a city park, which meant other odd things could happen, that we like had each other's backs after a while and that we were out there, I mean, in a big park with a lot of little kids, but that we could handle it. And then if we're actually going into the deeper wilderness, you would want your guide to be pretty regulated.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I love chatting with you too.
Yeah, so good. Thank you. Episode number 1.
Yes. Thank you both.
All right. Have a beautiful day.
You too.
Bye.
Stay wild.